Thank you, Professor Ryu. As I was introduced, I had an honor to serve as the first Secretary General of the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, located in Seoul, Korea. And that's why I'm invited here to make a presentation. And I also, I should say sorry that I actually sent my paper through email to this organizer, but I couldn't find it here. So I just should talk based on my paper. Well, my topic of today's presentation is Nordic cooperation as the future model for Northeast Asia regional cooperation. Traditionally, Northeast Asia has been characterized as a region not conducive to regional cooperation or integration. As the host of this forum rightly pointed out, despite its growing interconnectivity, Northeast Asian region still lacks sufficient institutional infrastructure and effective mechanism to mitigate potential conflicts and promote regional cooperation. Some scholars said this phenomena, Northeast Asia's stunted regionalism. And other international political scientists note organizational gap as the characteristic of Northeast Asian regionalism. And why? Why there is an absence? Why there is a weakness of institutional building up in Northeast Asia? There are some theoretical arguments. First argument is that historical conflicts among Korea, China, Japan, the three core countries in Northeast Asia, is so deeply ingrained that there is a very slim chance of those countries ever overcoming it, thereby rendering any possibility of sincere regional cooperation or integration in Northeast Asia highly unlikely. The second argument is that overwhelming influence of the United States in the region acts as a centrifugal force that makes any regional cooperation difficult. Korea and Japan, which have formed a military alliance with the United States and fall within the ambit of its security and economic umbrella, are naturally passive towards the idea of forming a regional cooperation. And finally, development and institutionalization of regional cooperation is premised on the balance of power amongst its member states. But in Northeast Asia, China is the overwhelming leader, politically, economically, and militarily. Therefore, the theory is that regional cooperation mechanism based on Europe's balance of power model is difficult. With this background, I'll introduce briefly the Trilateral Cooperation and Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat and the current status of this Trilateral Cooperation. Trilateral Cooperation is a regional cooperation mechanism composed of China, Japan, and Korea, the three core countries in Northeast Asia. Since the first Trilateral Summit gathering in the form of a breakfast meeting in March 1999, the three countries have held annual summit meetings, and as of 2017, the Trilateral Cooperation has instituted and manages ministerial conferences in 21 areas, including foreign policy, finance, trade, environment, culture, and agriculture, etc. In September 2011, a permanent secretariat, TCS, was established to systematize and institutionalize trilateral cooperation. As I told you, I had an honor to serve this organization as an inaugural Secretary General. Now I'll compare the trilateral cooperation and Nordic cooperation. Nordic cooperation is a regional cooperation mechanism consisting of 5 Nordic countries: Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. The trilateral cooperation is similar to Nordic cooperation in that both manage intergovernmental functions such as summit meetings and ministerial conferences, and also have permanent secretariat. And the member states lead the organization on a rotating basis. But the Nordic Council has a unique political mechanism that is absent in the trilateral cooperation. That is inter-parliamentary cooperation. Now I'll move on Nordic cooperation as the future model for Northeast Asia cooperation. I think Nordic cooperation is a realistic future model for regional cooperation in Northeast Asia for several reasons. First, Nordic cooperation seeks intergovernmental regional cooperation without giving up each member state's sovereignty. There is no prospect now and for the foreseeable future that China, Japan, or Korea would surrender an element of their sovereign powers for a common purpose. Thus, Northeast Asia doesn't have the conditions for integration, as was the case in the European Union, where the member states transferred certain sovereign powers over to the Union. Also, we think ASEAN is not the appropriate model. Actually, ASEAN is seeking to launch ASEAN community until 2020. That goes beyond the economic community model. Second, Nordic cooperation and the trilateral cooperation are very similar in terms of the developed mechanism of regional cooperation. As I said, both have annual summit meetings and regular ministerial conferences. Both organizations have permanent secretariat that provide intergovernmental administrative support. Third, Nordic cooperation shows one way to empower the trilateral cooperation by providing the much-needed parliamentarian cooperation. Actually, there is a bilateral parliamentary friendship association between the three member states, like Korea, China, China, Japan, and Japan-Korea Friendship Association. And when I was serving as Secretary General, we tried to provide we actually provided idea of forming a trilateral parliamentary friendship association when trilateral cooperation was on the rise in 2011 after the establishment of the permanent secretariat. But that effort didn't get far due to subsequent historical and territorial disputes among the 3 countries. Even though the Korean parliamentary actively pursued such opportunity for regional cooperation, and the Japanese Parliament was responsive, China's National People's Congress was passive toward the idea because of the reasons mentioned above. Thus, establishing a trilateral parliamentary friendship association could be a short-term goal for the trilateral cooperation. Okay, now you see, I'll conclude my remarks. I think the trilateral cooperation could learn a couple of things from the Nordic cooperation's experience. The first lesson is holding summit meetings on a regular basis. As I told you recently, because of disputes with regard to territorial and historical issues, the 3 countries couldn't hold a summit meeting. But this year, certainly, you see, there is a possibility in the latter half of this year, the summit meeting be held in Tokyo, Japan. And I think there is a very urgent need to establish a political consensus that summit meetings must be held on a regular basis, regardless of the prevailing political conditions at the time. Indeed, conflict among member states should be coordinated and mediated through summit meetings. I think we could learn from the Nordic cooperation's experience. Second issue is how to bring about inter-parliamentary cooperation. Nordic cooperation's substantive experience will also prove invaluable. At this juncture, it will be difficult for trilateral cooperation to create an inter-parliamentary cooperation like the Nordic Council for the Nordic cooperation. But Nordic cooperation's experience would still be insightful for creating a trilateral inter-parliamentary friendship association. In order to share all of these experiences, the TCS, the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, and the Secretariat of the Nordic Cooperation would need actively exchange and cooperate. I sincerely wish that both secretariats have the opportunity for mutual exchanges and active cooperation. When the delegates of the trilateral cooperation, of the trilateral cooperation visited Nordic cooperation in Copenhagen, Denmark, they could visit at the same time the EU headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, and learn from the EU's experience regarding advanced regional cooperation and integration. Actually, when I was serving as Secretary General, I was invited to EU headquarters, Brussels, and I was extensively treated and really well treated by the top leadership of the EU. But I couldn't notice at that time that actually EU is such a distant our goal, and actually our role model is just near the EU Brussels. I'm very sorry about it. You see, if I could notice it, of course I could visit Denmark at that time with my delegation. I composed with 3 countries. Actually, this is the first time that the relativity of trilateral cooperation and Nordic cooperation is talked about as an intellectual discussion at this kind of seminar. This is first time. So I hope that this kind of talk be held more frequently in the future. Thanks.